Thank you very much, everybody who's joining us on the live stream today, and those members that we have on Zoom. We have Mrs. Coote, Councillor Abbott, Councillor Lewis, and Councillor Clark. Hello, team. We're going to kick off today with some apologies from His Worship the Mayor and both Councillor Pottinger as well.
Yeah, moved.
Seconded.
Any declarations of interest with today's items? No one on Zoom either.
You should move the apologies be accepted.
I'll move the apologies be accepted. Thank you, Councillor Abbott. All those in favour?
Second that, if not else has.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Carried. Any declarations of interest? No. Don't think we need to carry those. Everybody's happy. We've got nothing in public forum today, and so then we'll move on to tab item number 4, which is the minutes of our last meeting held on the 5th of July. Any discussion on those?
Move that you're incorrect. They're confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Ludlow, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Soper. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 I'm not seeing any dissent, so we'll carry that. We then have item number 5, which is our General Policies Reserve Management Plan. Today we will have, I think, Cassie here to speak to this. Yep, I can see some waving over there. And Caroline Rain as well, to take us through the Policies Reserve Management Plan. Thank you very much for being here today, guys.
Kia ora, thank you. Okay, so General Policies Reserve Management Plan. Just some key points to put across is, so when we develop a management plan, there's a requirement under the Reserves Act that we need to consult with the community, and so this first step is mainly about creating an awareness to the public before we go into a full consultation on the draft when that's prepared next year. We've been working closely with Communications and Strategy and Policy to ensure that around this time of the year is seen as fairly light for consultation, so it's a great baseline for us to actually get that awareness out there now. And having this General Policies Management Plan will ensure that it encompasses all of our reserves and cemeteries, and rationalising the number of management plans produced as well.
Awesome. Now, this is just a way of sort of consolidating everything that we've got going on at the moment, because if I've got my understanding correct, we've actually got a lot of individual plans across a lot of reserves, which doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah, it just ensures that we have the best efficient uses of our resources and our time, so we're not having to repeat a lot of the policies across our reserves. And also when we do go out for future drafts that go under review, that we're just looking at one base reserve management plan. We will of course look at specific management plans for those key reserves like Queen's Park and the Premier reserves, which are listed in the report.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about what we will expect to see from the consultation from the public's perspective?
The first stage is hard to tell because really it's creating an awareness and really getting an understanding of who's interested and what people want to see. So it's just getting it out there to everybody that we can, so that they can have a chance to, or an opportunity to provide that feedback initially. And then when we get the draft back, I imagine there'll be a lot more feedback because people would have had a chance to read what we're proposing on different types of policies.
Brilliant. We've got 2 recommendations here. One is to receive the report General Policies Reserve Management Plan, and the second is to endorse proceeding to advertise for submissions over the months of August and September 2022 on the production of the new General Policies Reserve Management Plan. Do we have anybody that would like to speak on the matter? Ms. Coote? I mean,
Wrong one.
Cook? Right? Wrong one.
Cassie, I'm aware that the Sandy Point is actually out for consultation now. So this is a little bit chicken and the egg. What's going to happen if some of the underlying principles conflict with what is the outcome for Sandy Point.
So what will be stated in the general policies is anything that's noted in the specific, so for the Sandy Point management plan, that will trump the general policies because that's specific to that reserve.
Thank you for that.
Any further comments?
Happy to move the recommendations, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Soper, and thank you, Ms Cook. We've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Next, we have our activities report. So we have some of our group managers here to speak to that today. This is quite a general report that covers a wide range of activities across council. So those of you that are watching on the Zoom stream, or those that happen to be here in the public gallery today, we've got quite a few updates throughout this one.
Kia ora koutou.
You may have
For the Splash Palace aspect, take it as read. Now, this was the report for June. At the last meeting, Councillor Craig had asked a few questions about the performance of the first week. So with your indulgence, I'll give you some stats, even though it's actually next month's. Yeah. But I did think you'd be interested. The opening specials and promotion went really, really well. But here are some figures for you. There was 237,000 in excluding GST in revenue for the month, and that's 17% of the 21-22 total revenue target. So that demonstrates the how popular it was, and also within that, that's part of that money is made up of 28,000 for the cafe and 14,000 for retail. Both of those are the highest that they've been in the past 3 years. So that's a pretty good sign that increased participation, the layout and everything is doing what we hoped it would do. So some really good positive numbers there. Also 866 new members. Obviously there'll be a contraction. There'll be a lot of people taking the opportunity to get it there, and it won't settle down for a few months, but again, a really positive indication. The only remaining thing in that in the refurbishment is the bulkhead, which is just been delayed because of international shipping. It's coming from America, I believe. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah. Other than that, all going on target and looking good.
Kia ora. Just a quick update on parks. Probably the great news in regards to Bluff is the awarding of the Tourism Infrastructure Fund for the Bluff Active Recreation Precinct. We think that's going to be, combined with council's funding, going to be a great investment down there, and it's going to unlock quite a lot of extra recreation opportunity and something that's going to be awesome for our wider community as well as the Bluff community specifically. And just to touch on the works continue through both design and the construction phase with Airport Ave on the Stead Street project. So making good progress there, and happy to take any questions unless Michael Day's got any other updates on his part of the infrastructure group.
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair. Just like to highlight, we've started the roading repair season. Obviously, we've done quite a bit in relation to crack sealed completion, but the actual road sealing component won't be happening until slightly later on into the season when the weather is obviously slightly better. So that will be coming up towards the end of August. I believe we start doing our sealing roadwork, so something to look forward to.
Question.
Councillor Abbott, I think you were first there.
I actually think it was Graham, but never mind. Sorry about that, Graham.
The first one I saw.
Just interested, and I'd rather call it bandage sealing than crack sealing. Those silver slivery things on the road, is that what they are? Like snaky things?
Through yourself, Chair, that is exactly what they are. That's why they call it the bandage sealing, because it looks like a bandage sitting across the road.
Yeah, it looks like a slithering snake, but I suppose they're better on the roadway than elsewhere.
Which just seals the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Just a general question. The tourist infrastructural funding, it's a strange amount, it's a very exact amount. On what basis was that given, do you know? Or will there be a shortfall, possible shortfall? Is that worked on a particular budget, or how did they arrive at that figure?
Look, I've got the Parks and Recreation team here who might be able to talk a little bit about the funding, and they're looking at me as well. We put a total funding application of $1.1 million for that additional piece of work for the Tourism Infrastructure Fund. And the fund notification we received from MB was for the amount that they've granted down here. Now, how they've determined the exact figure, we're unsure. Caroline, can you add anything to that answer?
No, Steve, that's pretty much exactly as it occurred. We put in a full bid, and the award was for 981,000 for the tourism infrastructure from the Tourism Infrastructure Fund, but there was very little additional detail as to how they'd come up to that figure for us.
Okay, thank you very much for that. But in addition to that, my original question, is that going to leave us a shortfall that we're going to have to fund, and have we got that in the budgets to do so?
Through you, the Chair, the money that we actually put forward in the original bid does include what we put as third-party funding. So we are going to be able to deliver the core elements of that active recreation hub, and there may be some additional enhancements to that we won't be able to do with this base funding.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lewis. Just expanding on that, we had quite a wealth of people come through the consultation process last with the annual plan and the long-term plan, asking for us to invest in toilets in the car parking area for that sort of facilitated around the mountain biking areas. Is that included in this?
Yeah, correct. That's included in that, and that's part of Council's contribution to that overall project.
Brilliant. I think, well, they'll be a sector of the community that will be really happy. Awesome. I think next was Councillor Soper.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was just going to comment, having travelled by plane yesterday, that Airport Avenue is already looking better. Thank you.
And Councillor Clark, is that a hangover thumb? You hitchhiking? Sorry, you're on mute.
A couple of questions. One in relation to Splash Palace and the annual participation figures for Steve. When you compare this current financial year that's just ended, and you look at the 2020-21 year, which is a preceding one, which was a COVID period, there's a significant drop-off in participation. By my assessment, more than 120, 130,000. So if we had the Splash Palace closed for 5 weeks, that you'd expect that to be 10% of your client period. So putting that aside, we've still got quite a shortfall, about 80,000 difference between those 2 years, factoring in the closure period. So do the staff have any idea about why the participation rates is down?
Through you, Madam Chair. Look, part of this promotion was to get people re-engaged with the service, because we had observed that not only there were COVID impacts, but there's that habitual thing that was lost. So part of that promotion was to try and address that, to get the participation and that habitual thing of going to the pool normalised again. So we were aware of that. Trying to look back at past years, we've got a couple of years of pretty patchy data, and it is hard to compare one year to the other, but we're confident that we're on the upward trend now.
And if I may add to that, you also recall back in August we did go into a 4-week lockdown, and then as we moved through the alert levels, the pool's management had to, in order to facilitate community swimming, we had to have a lane gap between each swimmer. We could only have one swimmer per lane, and so we had some very, very tight restrictions on the operations, which also had quite a significant impact over a longer period of time in those numbers. So the combination of both the close downs, the shutdown or the lockdown, sorry, and then the restriction on operations has compiled into what we've seen as the numbers today.
And just as a follow-up question to that, Steve, do these sort of drop off and the slow pickup, does that change our views on a potential second swimming pool going forward? Is that something we just have to wait and see a little bit?
Just through Madam Chair, the second pool of hydrotherapy and spa and further developments wasn't based around increased participation or responding to an increased participation. It was about opening up a new market, so it shouldn't put us off at all.
Thank you for that response.
And finally for Steve, the issue of the Stead Street Stop Bank Climate Resilience Project update. Two things in there. Do we know what the budget is for that upgrade? I mean, the presentation we had from Waihopo Runaka last week, I think it was really positive. The artwork seemed really neat, but of course, no factor in there about what the cost is likely to be. So that's one issue. The other issue for me in that presentation was the location of a whale's tail, which I thought was really neat. But I'm just wondering whether in the bend on the airport arcade is actually the best place for it to be, given that a cultural narrative is not just for incoming tourists, for want of a better word, or travellers, it's also for the local people as well. And I'm just wondering whether that that whale's tail could be better located on either side of the small bridge that goes over the estuary. We've got quite a bit of land on either side there, and it could be quite a feature. So that's close to where the Stead Street Wharf is on that side, or that big open place that's on the on the left-hand side coming in.
Through you, Madam Chair. At this point, we're expecting the quantity surveyor to come back with the updated estimated costs of the cultural narrative. That has been part of the design team's approach already, and they have been looking at ensuring that we fit to the budget. And so the presentation was provided does meet that budget, but we're waiting on the final confirmation. That's going to be a couple of weeks away at this point. In terms of the partnership that we've got with the Runaka and in terms of location, it's certainly something we can pass feedback back onto, but it fits within the broader cultural narrative of both how we've dealt with the stop bank and in terms of how we're positioning the Airport Avenue in particular. I'm probably not able to answer any further specifics on how we've landed on that, but can certainly ask the design team to give us the advice as to what they have considered as the appropriate location.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that, Steve. I would like to just say that I know, Councillor Clark, you wouldn't have meant any offence by it by saying the word artwork, but I really would like to stress that this is a full cultural narrative experience. Like there's a whole lot of history and significance that will be built into the placement and the positioning and the general story and the craft behind it, rather than it just being a pretty piece of artwork. So I just wanted to really clarify that. Did anybody else have anything to say to the activities report? Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Firstly, just to comment on the way that the report from the roading, I really like that. It appeals to my sense of the understanding that I can follow that visual pathway. Quite a lot of information attached alongside it, but visually quite impactful. Just a couple of comments. The Airport Avenue contract with Te Tapua-Tāne, who will be speaking with us later, is not part of Mirihiku Regeneration. Te Tapua-Tāne is a separate entity in its own right. And I suppose it goes in concept with the sculptural piece, which is specifically targeted to be on Airport Avenue as opposed to being part of the Stead Street project. So in our narrative, we see them as, it's Waihopo's narrative, we see them as separate entities. We were asked to provide something for Airport Avenue, so that is the difference. Just in general, I think this report has a lot of information over a lot of different parts of our infrastructure that I think it would behoove people to read, because I think the Three Waters renewals, which is something that is top of people's minds at the moment, to see that it is ongoing, the repairs to the roads, to see that they're ongoing. Business as usual has not stopped because we're having all these big discussions, and I think that it's important that the public know that we don't just sit around talking, but the staff are out there doing the doing, and we're getting these interesting reports. So thank you very much to the staff who provide them.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. I quite agree with you. It's really good. This is a great avenue for us to sell some of our really successful, fantastic things that are going on in the community. Do we have any more comments on the activities report? No one from Zoom? No one from the floor? All right. We had a mover and seconder, which was Councillor Soper and Ms. Cook. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very much, and that brings us to the end of our public meeting. If I could have a mover and seconder for us to move into public excluded for the reasons listed on the screen.
Seconded.
Councillor Lewis, I think.
Councillor Lewis, thank you. Hard to keep a tab of Zoom and floor. And Councillor Scout, thank you very much, and welcome to the meeting before. Sorry I didn't get to say that at the time. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried and closed. Thank you, members of the public, for being here, and thank you very much to